Most analysts who assume a bell curve for their data set thresholds that miss rare spikes and then act surprised when the system fails exactly when it matters. The misconception is thinking that a normal distribution is the natural shape of any data set with many observations and that anything far from the middle must be an error. In truth, that assumption forces symmetry and thin tails onto processes that may be skewed, heavy-tailed, or split into distinct clusters, which makes probability estimates for extremes and confidence ranges look falsely precise. Picture yourself watching a dashboard using the mean and standard deviation to set alerts. The line drifts quietly for days, and by the time the surge finally breaches your threshold, the decision window has already closed. A normal distribution is not a vibe or a generic hill. It is a precise model describing how a continuous quantity is likely to vary when the deviations from a central level are symmetric and combine in an additive way. It is defined by a location, the mean, and a scale, the standard deviation, which together pin down how the mass of possible values concentrates and fades as you move away from center. If your data truly follow this pattern, then once you standardize by subtracting the mean and dividing by the standard deviation, every calculation about probabilities reduces to areas under a single reference curve. Why does that curve show up so often? Because when many small independent nudges push a quantity up or down, their combined effect is additive. Add enough independent pushes, and the sum behaves in a remarkably stable way. The middle becomes symmetric, the spread settles, and the shape smooths into that bell. This is the central limit theorem in plain language, and it does not require that the parts individually look like bells. It requires that their influences add without one part dominating and without strong dependence running between them. Here's a concrete picture. Imagine measuring the diameter of a manufactured part, not once, but repeatedly with the same tool and method. Each reading wobbles a little from the true size because of temperature, slight hand pressure, sensor drift, and surface roughness. None of those tiny effects is special on its own, and none cares much about the others. Stack them together, and the measurement errors add. The distribution of those errors is well modeled by a bell because you're looking at the sum of many independent small causes. That is where the bell curve earns its keep, not in the raw shape of every data set, but in the aggregate of many little pushes. This is where people trip. They hear that large samples lead to normality and then apply that to the wrong object. Large samples do not magically make the raw data look like a bell. If the underlying mechanism is skewed, taking more observations just gives you a clearer picture of that skew. What becomes bell-shaped under broad conditions is a distribution of an average formed from many independent pieces, or the distribution of an average computed across many repeated samples. Confusing those leads to wrong inferences about single data sets. The most common mistake is to use mean plus or minus a multiple of the standard deviation as a universal decision rule without checking the shape. That move bakes in symmetry and light tails. On strongly skewed data, this places cutoffs in the wrong places, declares ordinary values to be anomalies on one side, and misses genuine risks on the other. In heavy-tailed settings, it declares vanishingly small odds for events that are actually routine. The cost is miscalibrated alerts, intervals that are too narrow, and forecasts that fail exactly in the regions you care about. The actionable correction is boring and effective. Before you apply bell curve logic, interrogate the mechanism and the shape. Ask what adds and what multiplies. Additive errors push you toward normality. Multiplicative effects push you toward log-like shapes. Check whether there are distinct groups mixed together, such as different device types or customer segments, which would create multiple bumps that no single bell can capture. Then look at the data, draw a histogram, inspect its symmetry, and look at the tails. Use a quantile plot that compares your data quantiles to those of a theoretical normal. Straight and centered is consistent, systematic bends, signal mismatch. When the bell shape actually fits, it gives you very specific, testable patterns. The center, the median, and the average lineup. Deviations of equal size above and below the mean are equally plausible. The influence of far-out values fades quickly as you move away from center, which means truly extreme events are rare under this model. Standardizing by the mean and standard deviation puts different normal data sets on a common scale, so a single table or a single calculator can translate a distance from the center into a probability. That is the meaning of the normal model in practice. Symmetry, fast fading tails, and a universal scale for standardized deviations. Do not extend those claims beyond their scope. The light tails of the normal curve are a strong statement about how fast the probability of extremes decays. Many real processes have tails that decay more slowly. Financial returns, operational outages, times between rare events, and sizes of failures often live in that zone. A bell curve on such data will systematically understate risk where it matters because it expects extremes to be rarer than they are. This is not a minor technicality. It is the heart of why naive, normal assumptions break in the field. What about data that looks skewed because of multiplicative growth? When factors multiply instead of add, logs come to the rescue. Taking the logarithm turns products into sums, and sums are where the central limit theorem applies. That is why many strictly positive quantities with a long right tail look much more symmetric after log transform. If the log transform data look bell-like, you can do your modeling there, then map interpretations back to the original scale with care. The key is to line the transformation with the mechanism, add or multiply. There's also principled reason statisticians like the normal model when information is limited. Among all continuous distributions with a fixed mean and variance, the normal curve spreads its mass in the most agnostic way. In information terms, it maximizes uncertainty subject to those constraints. That means if all you credibly know about a quantity is its average and its spread, choosing a normal model is the least committal way to proceed. It is a baseline, not a verdict. As soon as you observe asymmetry, heavy tails, or multiple modes, you update away from that baseline. Another reason it shows up is stability under linear operations. And if two independent quantities are normal, their sum is normal. If you scale or shift a normal quantity, you remain within the same family. That stability is why linear models with many small independent error sources often end up with residuals that are close to normal. The randomness flows through the model, and because of independence and additivity, keeps the bell shape. Regression analysis, control charts, and signal processing all lean on that, because it lets you reason with a simple family under combinations and transformations. Now, a quick cleanup of a very persistent confusion. The law of large numbers says that as the sample size grows, the sample average settles near the true mean. It says nothing about the shape of the raw data. The central limit theorem says that the distribution of the properly scaled sample average becomes nearly normal as the number of independent pieces in that average grows. These are related but distinct claims. Mixing them makes people think more data forces bell-shaped raw observations, which is not true. More data simply makes whatever pattern is there sharper. Here's a grounded workflow that avoids the gotchas. Start by asking what story could plausibly generate the data. Are you looking at a measured physical property with many tiny independent sources of error? A normal model for the error term is sensible. Is it a total that is a sum of many minor causes? Normality for the total can be plausible. Are you looking at waiting times, sizes of transactions, or anything with a natural boundary at 0 and an occasional long right tail? A skewed model or a transformation is likely better. Do you suspect multiple groups are mixed? Split them, then model. Diagnose the shape before you standardize. Draw a histogram and stare at it with intent. Where is the mass? How many bumps? How do the tails look? Compare a quantile plot against the straight line you would get under normality. If the points hug that line except at the far ends, you may have mild tail issues, but an otherwise decent fit. If the whole plot bows or breaks into segments, normality is a poor summary. You do not need formal tests for this initial triage. Your eyes are good at symmetry, bumps, and tail behavior when you ask clear questions. If the bell does not fit, adjust instead of forcing it. For mild heavy tails with symmetry, a student curve is a drop-in replacement that relaxes tail assumptions while keeping the same basic structure. For skewed positive data, a log or square root transform can pull the shape into a more symmetric zone, after which normal-based logic might be appropriate. For mixtures, cluster or stratify so that each group has a coherent shape. For risk estimation where tails matter more than the middle, a quantile-based approach or a bootstrap interval avoids overconfident bell curve claims. None of these moves is fancy. They are the right tool for the actual shape. There's a final habit that makes the normal model useful without letting it mislead you. Treat it as a conditional claim. If the mechanism is additive and independent, and if the shape passes the symmetry and tail checks, then the normal model gives calibrated probabilities on the standardized scale. Keep the ifs explicit. When your results depend on tail areas, say so and verify the tails empirically rather than trusting a table. When your results depend mostly on the middle, the exact tail shape is less important, and the normal approximation may be just fine. The shift this lesson demands is simple and strict. Stop treating the normal curve as the default shape of data and start treating it as the behavior of sums or averages under additive, roughly independent causes with light tails. When you think that way, you calibrate your thresholds and intervals to the mechanism you actually have, not to a pretty picture you hope to see. Next, we look at reading a histogram, what the shape of data is telling you, because that is how you will see these ideas before you calculate anything.